Want to do the Randle talk?
Let's do it.
Okay. There are about 18 different ways that we could get into this. I'm going to let me try this. So it can never be an easy Julius Randle discussion, because whatever is going to come out of my mouth in the next 5 minutes, or is going to come out of your mouth in the next 5 minutes, it's going to piss a lot of people off, because you cannot have a conversation about Julius Randle without pissing off a somewhat significant portion of the Knicks fan base. That's just where this player is at this point. And people have kind of gotten into their camps because they, I think, view those who maybe don't agree with their general side as just like, how could you think that this player totally sucks, even though I think there's a lot fewer people out there who actually think that Julius Randle totally sucks than the people who love him think. And then for the people on the other side who maybe have some issues with Julius Randle, think that like, well, wait, how could you be all in on this player? Have you not watched the playoffs? Have you not watched this? So all of this is to say, I think the Knicks are in a situation where, given the available reporting from Ian Begley, which is that, again, just to use his words, neither the Knicks or Julius Randle has an extension at the forefront. That's his words, at the forefront. I also thought it was interesting that he included in that same bit of reporting several weeks ago that Julius loves it in New York and very much wants to win in New York and like believes in this team and like all of the things. So my guess is there's maybe a little bit more hesitation on the side of the Knicks than the side of Randle, at least at a number that they would be comfortable signing him at, which is really what this conversation boils down to. If you're the Knicks, you need Julius Randle. You need Julius Randle. And if there is probably, almost certainly, no opportunity, a good one at least, to flip Julius Randle into something that you like more than Julius Randle that exists right now. That is true. At the same time, you also have reservations. I'm guessing. Or at least some people in the front office have reservations. I don't have to guess at that, because that's another thing Ian Begley reported about, hey, if this is our team and it's Julius Randle and all the rest of these guys, maybe that's not good enough. Maybe we top out at level B when we need to get to level A. And if we sign Randle to a contract extension right now, there is a possibility, I don't know what the number is, it's a non-zero number, that he does not have the best of years, or at least displays some qualities that would make him less than easily movable with an extension attached to him that will not even start until at least next season. This is the proverbial rock in the hard place, I think. Not that it's a bad situation to be in. It's not. I'm not saying it's a bad situation, but like, whatever side you're on here, I think if you put yourself in the position of Leon Rose, you could at least appreciate where the Knicks are coming from in being hesitant to do anything with Randle right now, while at the same time understanding that like the guy's got one more year before he could become an unrestricted free agent. So your best time to do something, even if it's something you don't really want to do, may be now. That's the best way that I could kind of summarize where I think things are at.
I'm trying to think of where to begin with this. Everything you're saying is correct, and I agree with, right? In terms of the hunch. So let me start off here, right? Julius Randle is a phenomenal player. I mean, he just is. I think that if you love Julius Randle, it's because you recognize that this is someone who is probably destined before his injury to be a 3-time All-NBA player. But also, I mean, yeah, he probably was based on how voting was done and all of that.
I'm gonna go pull up the forward spots, but
we don't have to. But you don't have to look at the forwards. It's the best 15 players in the game. It's based on how they changed the rules.
That's right. It's no more.
Right. I mean, this is someone who. So I mean, you could say, well, maybe that's more of a case against him, but just how he played, especially. I struggle with that personally, but we're getting off topic. Even if you didn't feel like he was in, it's okay. It's okay. I know it's human nature for us to do it, but he was playing at an incredible level. But you could also say, why was his campaign cut short? It was due to the injuries. Where has he not succeeded in the playoffs? He has, the arguments for and against Julius, I think, are both incredibly valid. I happen to fall on the side that is, Julius is a great player, and I just don't think he gets enough credit. But I also don't think that he is here when the Knicks eventually hit their stride. It's why, based on how they gave up everything they did for Mikal Bridges, if you're the Knicks, you feel comfortable doing that because you've got one move left in you, but it's not this year. So the reason I have wanted Julius to extend is because I just feel like, based on what his max is, and especially a little bit below there, that's good value for a really talented player. And we've examined what the market looks like, and just purely what teams have cap space doesn't look great for him. So you could squeeze him if you wanted to. Here's the mistake. And this is a mistake that I have made. I have been viewing this as too binary, as shit or get off the pot. And I thought to myself last week, okay, Julius, let's say he doesn't sign the extension. What does that mean? How does that impact the Knicks? And it's very easy to look at Julius and work forward, but we know the Knicks don't operate that way. These NBA teams, they work backwards. They think of what the target is and how they work backwards. We can quibble about what backwards looks like to the Knicks, but here's what I know. The Knicks, let's say Julius signs the extension. He signs it. He probably does it after, next week. Then that way it springboards him past the 6-month time where he can't be traded, which, if it falls past the trade deadline, means he's got essentially a no trade clause. And that's fine, because the Knicks don't often do anything that really changes up their team super drastically. Okay. He doesn't sign it. They run the risk of losing him for nothing. Trading him. Well, who would they trade him for? Of course, one name that's been swirling about is Karl Anthony Towns. I tweeted about how now, if the Knicks, with the Precious Achiuwa signing, wanted to get Karl Anthony Towns, they would have to wait until mid-season, around the deadline. I mean, really after January 15th, because of the fact that the Achiuwa signing meant that they were not going to really be able to move any of these guys realistically. Like, they're not moving Josh Hart. They're not moving Dante DiVincenzo. The math to get you to Cat, that also doesn't hard cap you at the first apron because you're taking on more money, it features one of those two guys. And that's not happening. It also goes to the greater picture here, which, when it comes to Cat, is Karl Anthony Towns and Julius Randle are very different players. And if you're the Knicks, what you have prided yourself on every single season is, I know last season we could point to the OG trade with RJ and IQ and all of that, but the Knicks love their corner threes. They were 4th in frequency last year. They were 4th the year before. They went out and they got Mikal Bridges, big corner 3 guy. But the best thing about Julius Randle, and DJ Zulo has been so great about talking about this, is he finds guys in the corners. Like, he was number 4 in the NBA last season of players who had 1,500 minutes or more, finding corner threes and getting those corner 3 assists. Mikal Bridges, Julius Randle was. Mikal Bridges does a decent job at it. Maybe he could do more, but that's not his bread and butter. The year before, I think Randle's like 28th, something like that, but up there. That's not Cat's game. And what you're saying is, if you think that the Knicks, if you look at the math and saying, well, if the Knicks do this with Randle and add Mitch because they'd have to, and then add Precious, and of course that gets you Cat, that it works. That's great. The Knicks deciding to become a 5-out team, or at the very least shifting Cat into a role where he'd be a hub on offense, but unlikely to keep playing within how the Knicks operate as a team. I just don't buy it. I don't see that mid-season they're going to completely change their dynamic. And you could look at OG and say, well, they did that. But it's a very different circumstance, especially because RJ Barrett was actively hurting them based on how his fit with Randle was. And IQ is also up for a contract of his own. Even if you don't feel it's the most compelling case. It also depends on Minnesota making a change that they themselves may have zero interest in. Randle doesn't really fit what they do. Moving Cat is something they might explore in the offseason. It doesn't really work to me. It's not the cleanest fit. It's not seamless. And you're now telling the Knicks, hey, you guys have to completely change aspects of how you play to fit this. I just don't see it. So then there's the third option, right? Which is not shitting and it's not getting off the pot. It's playing out the season. And
what's the third option in the analogy?
It's diarrheaing your pants. I don't know. Like it's something.
Okay, sorry. Play out the season.
You know what it is? It's you don't get off the pot. It's you really have to shit, but you're not home and you're just like clinging for dear life that you hope that that's what this pod's turned into. Here's the crux of it, right? So what's the third thing? It's a sign and trade. If they're not signing him, extending all these things. Sign and trades are complex. They're really frustrating to figure out. So I spent this week and I thought, let's just dig deeper. And the thing that people should probably consider is that when a player gets signed and traded, what's their salary? What does their outgoing salary look like? The salary for someone like Julius, if Julius were signed and traded, the salary for the last season of his preceding contract, so that would be the contract he's currently on, it would be that or 50% of the first salary of the new contract. So if Julius is making $40 million for the sake of the math on his next
whichever
deal,
is higher, right?
It would be whichever's higher. So it would be $20 million versus the 28.9. Oh, but there's more. What more is there? The $28.9 million may not be $28.9 million because Julius has an unlikely bonus. The unlikely bonus is a really easy one. It just didn't convey last year, which is that Julius has to play 65 games and the Knicks have to make the playoffs. So if Julius can just do better than missing 17 games, his cap hit goes up, which also benefits the Knicks. So the Knicks could be saying, we value Julius. We also know he's probably not going to accept the offer we want. But if we wanted to take his salary for matching purposes and aggregate it, which then hard caps you at the second apron, with any salary to help you get a player you really want, like you go off of the 30 point whatever million dollars. I think it's 30.1 or 2. So in that context, right, you're comfortable not paying Julius because you feel like financially you can get away with doing whatever you have to do. And that is sort of where it comes to, where it's how interested are the Knicks in truly locking down Julius? Do they view this as something that they can just kick to the next season? They very easily could. It could even benefit them financially to not sign him now. It's just playing into that game of making math work. Because if I'm Julius Randle and I was named to these all NBA teams and I'm an all-star and I want to get paid and all this stuff, I could get paid. You're basically saying to him, you're telling me that I could get paid more than the max the Knicks could offer. And if it were somewhere else, then the cap hit benefits me to go to that place and it doesn't hurt the Knicks. It's kind of a win-win depending on how it shakes out. It's just if Julius stays and the Knicks pay him, then the Knicks they might have to pay him more. And I've been going on for a while. I'm getting very much into the weeds because the Knicks have to. And the last thing the real last thing. Let's say the Knicks don't pay Julius and they don't trade him. And then they're committed to not extending him next year. But they want to find avenues to get some other guy using Julius. But hey, if they get some other player and that player comes in, if they're taking on more money, hard caps them at the first apron. That's a no-no. So if Julius is staying for this season, the whole season, and he's not getting extended, it will impact other players on the roster. Because if the Knicks want to make the math work, it basically means we have to find other salary and make it more fungible to then add to the Julius factor to get that guy. And I'm not saying that they're definitely going to do this, it's going to work and all that. I'm not. But the Knicks have always prided themselves on being as prepared for these situations as possible. So it's a choice. Julius doesn't get moved. it means that you have to look at other players down the pike or, further down the depth chart of importance and find ways to go there.
This conversation needs to happen in the weeds because it's not a misconception. That's the wrong word. The biggest error that people make, I think, when having the Julius conversation is to think it is about, this is about whether Julius, fits the Knicks or he doesn't, or whether the Knicks like Julius or they don't like Julius. No, that's part of it. Obviously, that's part of it. It goes without saying. But at the same time, we collectively, like Knicks fans, may spend a lot of time going back and forth about Julius Randle. I think the Knicks at this point have a pretty good idea of what Julius Randle is, what he's going to be moving forward, what their ceiling is with him and what it's not. And the risks that would come, they know all this shit already. This is about logistics. And I think it is very interesting that Fred Katz, in his recent piece on Julius Randle, mentioned an option that I had not seen anybody else bring up. And so I want to give Fred a shout out, which is Julius opts in to his player option for the 25-26 season and then extends off of that number, which would allow the Knicks to skirt the second apron for one. We know they're going to be under the second apron next season. This would allow the Knicks to skirt the second apron for an additional season, which we're not going to get into all the cap stuff right now. But if you can kick that can down the road for one season, you do it. And it's probably going to wind up meaning a lot. It's probably going to extend your runway that much more. So I wonder, I guess maybe my biggest question right now, if I was to be able to ask Leon Rose something, I'm assuming that's the biggest thing for them right now is how do we avoid the second apron for 2 more years? And if they sign Randle starting at his max number that they could give him right now, which would be $40.5 million in 25-26, in this scenario, he would be opting out of that player option. It would be not impossible for them to stay under the second apron in that season, but would you agree with me that it would be difficult?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
I think it would be difficult.
The reason why is it depends on it basically ignores other potential moves being done. That's why I hesitated and said no. It's ultimately, I think they get there. It's just if we're talking about nothing else changes except for that, you're 1,000% correct.
Yes.
I don't expect that. I expect them to make other moves that would then, especially because if more money has to go out this season anyway, it's going to lower that threshold for the following year.
You're proving my point in a different way. It would necessitate them doing other things, jumping through other hoops that they may not want to jump through, because now it's not only we're considering our team, with Julius for someone else, it's we're considering our team with Julius, but without X, Y, or Z that we would need to do to duck the second apron because they don't want to be over the second apron in that year. Is that the thing that's most important, which I'm assuming? Or are they worried about, Julius he's going to be 30 years old in, what's his birthday, in November or December or something. He's going to be 30 years old pretty soon. He's had some injuries recently. You could say that they've been freak injuries. This is also a guy who plays with more physicality than anybody in the league. I mean, he throws his body is his biggest weapon. That's what makes him stand out from other guys. His position, power forward, with an emphasis on the power, doesn't really exist anymore in the NBA. It went away, with the dinosaur. He still has it, and there is a possibility that these are not the last injuries that we see from him as he gets up in years. And so, are they worried about, if things go a little sideways, not with the team, or not even necessarily with Julius, getting some kind of catastrophic injury, but just dare I even say this? Not comparing these two players. But Zach LaVine might be the most untradeable contractor in the NBA right now. If he's not the most, he's up there. It was a year ago, Jeremy, where we sat here and had a conversation about Zach LaVine being a potential target for the Knicks, and you made that presentation, and you were not crazy to do it at all, because this is a guy who had a couple of little dings and dents and things, but like immensely talented player. He's a lot younger than Julius. When you get players at this level who are not like in the top 10 or top 15, but they're more in that like 20, 25, 30, whatever range of the league, and something slips, something goes awry, all of a sudden that big number out there at the 4 years from now on their contract becomes mighty untenable. I wonder if it's more that part of it that they're worried about, because that's, or maybe they're just worried about both things, which would make sense. But that's kind of what I'm curious about at this point.
Could be. And Fred's article, I appreciated the thoughts that he had there, because if Julius did opt in and extend, like kind of opt in and then extend in trade sort of thing, the way the math actually probably would benefit the Knicks if they were to move him that way, because I gather, it would have to be, yes, that his player option would be more than the previous season's cap hit. It just would have to be based on the name. So it actually might help the Knicks bridge the gap between, moving Julius' salary and not. And this is conversation for a much later date. I don't want to zoom too far ahead, because I have ideas of what they can do, but I'm going to keep some of them myself because we've got other content to produce.
We have a podcast, but Jeremy.
Yeah, we can slow walk this. There's plenty of time. But
we got time.
One of the thoughts also is, in the heat of the moment when the Precious news came out, I was having a work emergency, but I also wanted to put some thoughts out, and I wrote that it made a Julius extension more likely. And I was wrong on that, primarily because I wanted the Julius extension, because it's just a lot easier to move that contract. And if you are the type of person who doesn't want Julius on this team any longer, like, let's move him, but also don't move him for a terrible deal, it doesn't really make sense to me why you wouldn't want him extended, because it's easier to move him, because you don't have to worry about will he opt in? Where does he want to go if he doesn't opt in? Because it's a sign and trade. There's more in your control. But it's almost like help me help you sort of thing. But it's not viewed that way. And the Knicks are not going to be the type to downgrade. They have never done that. It's not going to be moving Julius to downgrade. And again, the only upgrade in this general context right this moment was the Cat discourse, which I don't even really want Cat. Like, the craziest thing that I saw from Twitter with the reactions, because it's like, we don't want Cat. And like, you don't like, or Jeremy, like, why do you want Cat? It's like, I'm not even saying that. I just don't, they're not going to move Hart or DiVincenzo. It's not happening this summer. Or another one, which was, they could easily do it this winter. It's like, I didn't say this winter. I said this summer because of Precious's contract. Like, there's a reason there. There was another person who was like, you don't understand how this team works. I'm like, yeah, man, you're right. I don't follow this team. I have no clue.
Jeremy,
whatever.
Truth hurts.
It does. It really, and it hit me to my core. But that's the thing. I was wrong to use my own wants to get the Knicks, like, to pass it off as an expectation. And it just wasn't the case. And of course, Ian talked about it like 20 minutes later of like, this doesn't make an extension likely. And I was like, well, that's a mistake that I made, which is fine. But it's like, there are ways for them to go. It's just the easiest thing possible is to say, should the Knicks re-sign Julius or not? And the real, like, nuts and bolts of this is, okay, so what happens in the scenario that they don't? And I don't think people are quite ready for what could transpire if Julius isn't signed, because of the second apron, because of the direction they'd want to go. Because if it's not Julius, they'd want a better player. And it's figuring out who that better player is and how the math works for that, and setting yourself up financially so you enter next summer prepared to potentially get that player. There's so much to unpack, and we're just kind of surface level on this. And that's all we need to be right now. I'm just warning people, it's going to be way more complex than should the Knicks bring back Julius or not.
And a part of that, and this, we could end it here, is Julius has been an interesting guy over the time that he's been here. He seems to get he seems to fluctuate in terms of his feelings at any given time, his personality. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying that. The what does Julius want and what is Julius prepared to do to get what he wants, which are two separate questions, factors in here massively, because the odds that there is a situation that Julius would be able to walk into a team's cap space next summer and that team would be a contending team or even a semi-contending team that would welcome him in, I'm not sure that team is there. Things could change. I mentioned the Houston Rockets before. The Houston Rockets have a lot of cap space. How does Julius fit with them? That's a different conversation. I mean, if you think maybe the Spurs are going to take a big leap, maybe the Spurs could have cap space. Julius is from Texas. Both of those teams play in Texas. So, but how much does this next payday matter to him? And obviously money should matter to him. Money matters to us. Money matters to everybody. You need money to live. And I'm not going to begrudge anyone for getting every last dime that they can. OG Anunoby didn't literally get every last dime that he could, but he got a lot of dimes in the contract that he just signed. Julius sees that. He sees what OG is making. He knows what he provides to the team versus what OG provides to the team, at least in the scoring column. I wonder how he feels about that. I wonder how he feels about Jalen Brunson just taking what Jalen Brunson took. These are all factors. And again, I don't know how much the Knicks are worried about any of what I just talked about in terms of again, what Julius wants and what he's prepared to do to get it. But this situation is the thing that hit me the hardest was I started a thread yesterday on Substack chat, and someone was just the conversation turned to Julius, and someone was just can we just sit back and enjoy our contending team? We haven't had a fucking contending team in 3 decades. Can we just enjoy this? And I felt my heart went out to that person who made that comment. And at the same time, if you want to know the reality of what the new CBA is doing, that's the reality. Nobody gets to sit back and just enjoy it. You have to be thinking about this stuff every year, pretty much. That. That's just where we're at. It is where we are. And
in some ways, it makes it more fun. But
for us, it does. I think for a lot of people, it makes it a lot more frustrating.
I've done my diatribe of how it has ruined basketball discourse and the challenges there. But yeah, it's I can look at a list of numbers based on how the CBA is structured and be well, that player doesn't make sense because they're not signed next year and the chaos. That player doesn't make sense. It's easier for us, which hopefully helps us give a more narrow, targeted list, especially as trade season eventually comes upon us, which let's play the first basketball game, or let's even see who fills the 15th spot. But
yes,
but that's the chaos that it brings. And yes, to us, it's more fun. To the average basketball consumer, it's probably a pretty unfortunate experience.